Chapter 20 Artemis Meets Karla, Episode 1. Artemis lived in the Midwest of the United States, Colorado. She didn't know she was well outside the norm. She didn't know that it was unusual to be taught and trained at home by a man that had also trained many others for counterinsurgency or covert black operations. She figured that was the thing to do. It had been perfect training for hunting, tracking small game through the forest. Grandpa was gone now and Artemis lived with her grandmother. Her grandmother was very forgetful. She couldn't take care of herself anymore. Luckily, she was harmless. She didn't need or want much and was content to sit and watch from the deck. She sometimes worked a little in the garden. She liked to talk to the goats and the chickens. Artemis had parents, of course. She had a few childhood memories about big, tall buildings and loud streets. The two grown-ups, Mom and Dad, who took her places, sometimes talked to her. Artemis didn't feel like she was that girl, or that girl should not have been in those memories. One summer when Artemis was about 10 years younger, the family flew out west to visit Grandma and Grandpa. Artemis and her grandparents got on perfectly. Artemis and her grandfather became a team within minutes of Artemis being on the farm. Artemis begged to stay for the rest of the summer. Her parents figured, what the hell? Artemis had another month before she had to go back to school. They reasoned that with their daughter being entertained by the grandparents, the parents could take some time to party and be crazy. They were still young. One party led to another, and before they knew what happened, they decided to buy and sell really large quantities of cocaine. One thing led to another, like it can with large quantities of drugs, and they didn't get back to pick up Artemis. The summer never seemed to end with all the snow. Artemis wanted to stay on the farm. Grandma and Grandpa were happy to have her. They weren't going to send her away. Grandpa had a huge library. Books on birds, bugs, wild canine, anything wild. Home remedies. Grandma had 43 years of Reader's Digest. And there were other books in the attic that were especially from Grandpa. Grandma didn't disapprove, just didn't want them in view in case visitors came. Something that nearly never happened. Not in the last several years. Grandpa had a workshop, so when Artemis was 11, they figured it was time to make some more practical things. Bird homes and feeders, chicken coops, those sorts of things she had been doing for years. Grandma had taught her how to sew and tan leather. The cow died one winter. Simplest thing to make was a spear. So she made that first. She made another one after that, and another. Each time, just a little better. Grandpa let her watch him do it. And with the 10th one, she killed a wild turkey. She soon learned that killing a wild turkey was much easier than getting all the feathers off. She knew how to find wild herbs, roots, and wild peas. Making a bow was not easy. A simple one was, but a good one took a great amount of skill. She started with a simple one, took some time to make some good arrows, then made another bow. Making a bowstring also took time to perfect. Making knives was a fairly brutal venture. Finding metal wasn't a problem. The barn was full of old tools. It took some work to make a new blacksmith oven and learn how to operate it. But when she was finally ready to start heating and hammering metal, she was in her element. Each time she heated and pounded a piece of metal, she swung her hammer with the alternate hand. After she made many different knives, including a fish knife and a bowie knife and a few assorted hunting knives, she made many throwing knives, and when she felt she was finally ready, she made a sword. That was still a little beyond her. She studied how to make a sword like the masters in Japan. They knew how much and not too much with iron and carbon, and Artemis settled for a sword that was well balanced. She had no intention to cut anything. She wanted to learn to use it. Weapons, of course, were not the only thing she made. She made a veranda all around the house so Grandma could sit facing any direction, and Artemis too. She made cedar shingles and put on a new roof. She chopped wood for the kitchen stove, their only source of heat. She took care of the garden and the goats and the chickens. Grandpa would have helped her with most of those things were he still around, but he wasn't. He had said he had something he had to do before he got too old. Since he was already 86, it made sense that he undertook the mission his heart was set on. He didn't talk about it, but after he didn't return, Artemis searched through the attic to find any clues. She could only figure that he had gone to the Vatican. He wasn't going to visit the Pope. Artemis knew that without reading any of his research.